Hello everybody, my name is Joshua and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Coffee, Cats, and King, where we will discuss books, both new and old. I will share with you pictures of my cats who will make you wish they were your cats. I will drink enough coffee for me and everybody watching. My mug today is one of my favorites. I think it perfectly sums up this particular season of the year. My shirt is my Edgar Allan Poe / Crow mashup. So, yeah. So those of you that saw my last video, that was my TBR that my wife did with me. So I know you'll all be very disappointed that it is just this mug here instead of that gorgeous one. But I hope to have her on again in the future and later videos, her and some other little special guests here and there. So just like my TBR was very late this month, so too clearly is my wrap up for last month. So that's what we're going to do today. Before we get into the books, I'm going to go on and share some cat footage because you guys have been without it for a long time now. So let's do that. Oh my goodness. We don't often get this from Chaos. What are you doing, you silly? Oh boy. Okay. So the very first book that I read in the month of August was Sarah Davis Goff's Last Ones Left Alive. And I got this from a book outlet haul a long time ago. I'll link that video somewhere up in this area. And this was described to me as Cormac McCarthy's The Road, but in Ireland. And I'd venture to say that it is very much like The Road, but it is also a sort of zombie apocalypse, just done in a very beautiful way. And so actually my little note to myself was a woman named Orpin travels post-apocalypse Ireland with a dead body in a wheelbarrow and avoids zombie-like creatures called Skrakes. So, if that sounds interesting to you, I highly suggest this book. If you are at all intrigued and interested in Ireland, then I think it's a great book because the imagery is just so beautiful. And it's interesting, really, the juxtaposition between how beautiful Ireland actually is and how beautiful it still continues to somehow be after this apocalypse. So that, for me, was really great. And I ended up giving the book 4 stars. Next up, I jumped into one of the Goodreads giveaway wins that I won through the month. I won a couple of them, and this was the first. That was Listen to the Colors by J.L. DuPont. This I ended up giving 3.5 stars. It is a World War II story told from the point of view of 2 old friends who end up on opposite sides of the war, as well as through the eyes of a boy who is 12 years old. We see his life from the age of 12 to the age of 16, and what's interesting is that this boy has autism, so he sees the world in very, very different ways than most people do. So it makes for a very interesting read. There were times where I was very drawn in and other times where I had a hard time sticking with it. You know, I wanted to read a couple pages and then put it away because it just wasn't holding my interest. But overall, it was a fairly enjoyable read, fairly quick, really. And if you're into historical especially World War II fiction, then it may be a good one for you. Okay, continuing down the ladder a little bit, my next read was a 3-star read. That was Ben Archer and the Cosmic Fall. And I got this for free, so I thought I'd give it a try. It was described to me as a young adult alien contact story. And really the best way to sum it up, I think, is crash landing UFOs, a young boy who is somehow connected to this site, and aliens with magic. It sounds weird, I know, but that's pretty much how it felt. You know, I was intrigued. The writing definitely needed some work. At times, it did not seem like a young adult or teen novel whatsoever, because I was just reading it and I found myself kind of getting bored by the technicality of it. And I just thought, you know, man, I couldn't imagine your average, 12 or 13-year-old reading this. But there were also parts that were rather exciting, some good stuff in there. But then the aliens came, and like I said, it was weird. It was like it wasn't even a technology thing. It was more like they were using magic. It was very odd. But I gave it 3 stars. I got through it. There are other books in the series. I'm not going to read them. Thankfully, after that, I ended up with a couple reads back-to-back that were really good for me. So, the first being Stephen King's newest release, Billy Summers. Beautiful cover. Billy Summers is about a hitman, and your classic hitman going on his last job type deal, and he knows all the cliches that goes with this. He knows that in all the movies and all the books, when a hitman goes in for his last job, it always ends up absolutely disastrous. So he anticipates that. He knows it's going to happen. You as a reader know it's going to happen. You just don't know to what extent and in which direction Stephen King is going to take this. So for me, I very much enjoyed it. I like his crime fiction as well, more in The Colorado Kid and Joyland and that sort of thing. There were some really cool references to The Shining and a couple of his other books, as there always is in the Stephen King realm. And overall, just an enjoyable read. I thought he did a great job. It does, of course, get a little political at times, as is the case with most of his new fiction, but I just set that aside and keep reading to enjoy the rest of it, and I very much did. So 5 stars for Billy Summers. Alright, so another 5-star read is PJ Knight's third creepover book. This is Ready for a Scare. So I'm very slowly reading through these. I'm really wanting to get more into them because I'm enjoying them very much, and they keep getting better. So like I said, this is the third one. This one was 5 stars for me. It was the best of the 3 that I've read so far. This is about a girl who's supposed to be celebrating her birthday with a bunch of friends, having a slumber party, and it gets canceled because there's a big storm coming in. So they decided to do it over computer cams, like a Skype kind of deal. And they're just talking, having a good time, telling some spooky stories, and suddenly things start getting weird. One of her friends, the camera turns red, and she disappears out of frame, and there are all these weird noises and stuff. They're seeing shadows back behind them, and all this creepy stuff, and it just ramps up from there. I said it on Goodreads, but PJ Knight is really impressing me. This stuff just keeps getting better, and I think I even said that if this is what I can expect from PJ, then we may have a new R.L. Stine on our hands. So I'm really excited to continue this series, and I hope that Ready for a Scare was just leading up to better and better work. Alright, so sadly this next one didn't work out quite as well for me. Last month I reviewed a book by Sarah Clancy. It's part of a trilogy she has, and I'd never heard of her or anything. I was fairly impressed. There were definite issues in the writing, but overall I enjoyed it, and I suggested it to some of you guys if you wanted a quick read with some sort of hoodoo voodoo in there, supernatural elements and horror. and it had a great start. So I went on and read the second one. This is Haunted Waterways. And this one also starts out with a bang, but very quickly I realized that all those issues that I had with the first one are compounded in this one. Adjectives and verbs were used constantly over and over again, the same ones. There's a lot of action to the story, but it felt kind of ridiculous, you know? There's so much that this lead character goes through, and she's being thrown around and bloodied up and beaten up constantly and constantly, bones breaking and that, but she keeps going, and I'm just thinking, my gosh, is she even human at this point, you know? It became very silly. There was no time for any sort of developing of the characters because everything was just action, 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 action. It just didn't work for me. I gave it 3 stars. I don't think I'm going to read the last one. I barely got through this one despite how small it is. The first one was decent, but really, it lost me after that. Now, the next one did not disappoint whatsoever. That is Mary Downing Hahn's The Old Willis Place. And based on the cover, I don't think it's spoiling anything to say that 2 of the main characters here, Diana and Georgie, they sort of haunt the Old Willis Place, and one day they wake up to find that it is being taken over by new caretakers, a man and his young daughter, and they slowly start developing a relationship with this girl, a friendship, and the girl, it takes her a while to realize that something is a little odd about these kids, and the kids themselves, they don't necessarily know what's going on. They know that they have to follow this very strict set of rules, and if they break these rules, there are awful consequences. So, it's an interesting read, and I would highly recommend it. I give it 5 stars. Once again, I want to thank the lovely subscriber that sent this to me. You know who you are. Thank you. I enjoyed it very much, and it will definitely have a place on my bookshelf for future reading. Okay, I'm now getting into back-to-back Goodreads giveaway wins. The first being a short poetry collection called Deteriorate. I'm a big fan of poetry. I read poetry quite a bit. Not necessarily on this channel, although I'm going to start incorporating it more because there's a lot of excellent poetry out there. I think that it's sad that more people don't enjoy it. But Deteriorate in this case, like I said, very short collection, but very much enjoyed it. I give it 4 stars. If you need a quick read, a nice introduction, then this may be a good one for you. And then the second Goodreads giveaway is Lorena's Mirror. It's a very, very quick visual sort of story. All the artwork is done by the author. It's a bit of an existential nightmare, is how I'll say it. But the visuals, the imagery, are very effective. They're odd and off-putting, but very interesting. And there's one scene in there with Lorena where she is sitting on the tongue of a giant version of herself while the smaller version of her is swallowing a second, even tinier version. And it's crazy and wacky and really cool. It's super quick. I give it 3.5 stars. Moving down the chain again, I read Super Dark by Tanith Morse. And I was really excited about this one. It was described as a sort of paranormal romance almost, and I kept reading it and kept waiting for the romance to happen, and it took a long time before any of that showed up. So up to that point I was a little confused on why it was described that way. But it starts out with a neat concept in that there's this girl, years before, her and her best friend are out trick-or-treating, and they decide to go to one more street, one more down from where they're supposed to go. So they go down, and these people come flying up in a van and grab them both, and they're all grotesque and strange. And the little boy, her friend that's with them, he begs the people, please let her go, let her go. Well, they actually do, and then he is taken away by these creepy, crazy people and never seen or heard from again. So this is then fast forwarding years later, where she is much older. She's almost ready to graduate high school. This boy shows up one day, this very mysterious boy. He's incredibly handsome and seems to have these strange abilities, these weird aspects of him that just don't make sense, but very much intrigue the lead female character. Her name is Sam. I had some major issues with the writing in this one. It was not great by any means, but the mystery of who this boy was, or what happened, more importantly, all those years ago, that intrigued me enough that I kept reading through to the end. And I will say that despite some issues with the writing, I enjoyed it all the way up to the point of the big reveal, where everything just devolved into an absolute mess, and from that point on, every second of it was just painful to get through. So I ended up giving it 2.5 stars. It just fell apart tremendously after that point. It became so ridiculous that I started having visions of Panzer Spirit again. The only thing that made up for it was the next book that I picked up, and that was Peter Saxton's The Torturer. I was planning on doing a full review of this, but I still never made it around to it. So The Torturer sounded like a killer, 60s, 70s maybe, horror film, something, in the exploitation realm. And if it was not some sort of movie, then it should have been, because it would make an excellent one. And Michael K. Vaughan actually informed me that Peter Saxton is not one author, but a whole bunch of authors who all got together during that time period to write a ton of different books. So I don't actually know who wrote this, but it's an excellent book. And it's weird too, because there are times where you can tell that the author put in very minimal effort, and there's some cheesy lines, some ridiculous things, some things that just very, very easily could have been tightened up to make it a better book. But somehow I still enjoyed every second of it immensely. It was like reading a great horror movie from back then. And I loved this book. So I definitely intend to talk more about it at some point. But in the meantime, I gave it 5 stars. It was awesome. And if any of you happen to find this out there somewhere, pick it up for yourselves and enjoy it. Sadly, my science fiction pick for the month didn't impress me quite as much. That was H. Beam Piper's The Cosmic Computer. And it has a great cover. I love the cover. The book itself, though, was kind of a letdown. So it's about this cosmic computer called Merlin. It's more of a legend than anything, but these people from this war-torn planet, they decide that they're going to go hunting for it. And essentially the main character spends the entire book just taking advantage of these people, because he kind of knows in his heart of hearts that Merlin isn't real, but the only way to get them to go along with his plans is to make them believe that Merlin is real, and so they fight for him, they die for him, all the while he knows that they are fighting for a lost cause. So in ways it is a typical science fiction novel of the time. It was okay. It's just nothing about it really impressed me all that much. So at the end of the day, I gave it 3 stars. I had one DNF for the month. That was Brian Gruley's The Hanging Tree. Now, this is one that was given to me by my mother as part of a blind date with a book. She's sent me 2 of those. They're both in past videos. This was the first of those books that I picked up to read, and I read the first probably 30 or 40 pages and it just was not working for me. I didn't care for the guy's style. I hated the main character. I just wanted to slap him silly, and I knew that I was not going to get any sort of enjoyment out of this book. So I just went on and DNF'd it, because I knew that I had other great reads to get to for the month. And those great reads start with Holes. If I could, be smart about this and show the entire book. So, Holes. I talked about this before. It's an excellent book for adults, for young adults, for teens. All around great book. Great movie, if you guys haven't seen the movie. And this is one of those really, really surprising cases where the movie almost follows the book exactly, to the point where very little of the dialogue is changed even. There's one character that is changed in regards to his description, and then there's just one or two scenes that change, but otherwise the movie is exactly what the book is. And that's very surprising anytime that happens. But I have read this book before and enjoyed it immensely. I think I got more enjoyment out of it this time. And it really makes me want to go out and get a copy of the second book so that I can read that one and enjoy it as well. But if you have not watched the movie, if you have not read the book, do yourself a favor and do one or the other, or do both, because they're both incredible. The last Kindle book of the month, and the last of my Goodreads giveaways, because wow, I won a lot of books this month. This was White Lines by Tom Fowler. I'm not going to talk about this book a lot. It was not for me. I found it ludicrous and ridiculous. I gave it 2 stars. I only finished it because it was a Goodreads giveaway. So the last book that I finished for the month was Christopher Fowler's The Devil in Me. And this again came from that haul where I got a bunch of his books. Wasn't sure how it was going to work out. This was one of his short story collections, and it actually impressed me quite a bit. I gave it 4 stars. It was almost a 4.5. It was right there, somewhere between. And I'm still kind of teeter-tottering actually, but I very much enjoyed it. I did not know what to expect. But his stories are very, very much layered. It is not just a simple premise, jump in, scare you, and get it done. There's a lot more to it, a lot more underlying in these stories, and it was really nice because I'd finish a story and it was spooky and scary, and then I would sit there and I would think about it a little more and realize that there was so much maybe that I had missed, or so much more that I just didn't even realize at the time, and so I would actually go back and reread the story. And that to me makes it super effective. So even as I'm talking about this, I feel like I need to update it and just say that this is 4.5 stars, because for me to stop and really think about these horror stories, for me to speculate on the history of these characters, I mean, that alone tells you how effective it was. So excellent. It makes me super excited to get into the next one from him. And there you go. That was my 15 books that I finished for the month. It was a pretty good month. It surprised me because I started out super slow, but man, it was a lot. I know it was a lot, guys, and I appreciate that you stick around for these things, and if you don't, then that's okay. I perfectly understand. I will be back in a few days with a tag video because it's been a while for one of those. This is not going to be about books, but more about me. It's the Your Answers Can't Be Books tag, so by proxy, no books. So if you want to learn a little about me, then look for that video. If you don't, then skip that one, go to the next one, and we'll be back to book-related content. And that'll do it, guys. You've had your cat footage, you've had my wrap-up for the month, you have my TBR in my last video, you'll learn a little more about me in my next video, and then we're going to be back to talking about books, because I have some awesome reviews coming up. So, as always, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I hope you enjoyed a good cup of coffee while you enjoyed yourselves. And I hope that I will see you around soon, that we'll get to talk a little in the comments. Have a wonderful set of days coming up, because I don't know when you're watching this. You know, it could be the weekend, could be during the week, whatever. Make the best of it. Have a great time, guys. Cheers.